It was one of those nights where the fog draped itself over the town like a thin, suffocating blanket. I remember stepping out onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking softly under my feet, and noticing the pale light of the street lamp flicker through the mist. The silence was so complete it pressed against my ears, broken only by the faint hum of something I couldn't place. Something distant, metallic, almost alive. I told myself it was a wind, but then, for a heartbeat, the hum shifted like a pattern forming in the air. I felt my skin prickle, every hair on my arm standing on end, as if the fog itself was breathing. I tried to shake it off, leaning back into the shadow of the house, but a cold sense of being watched clung to me, and that's when I saw it, just above the tree lean, a dim, hovering light, pulsating slowly, almost intentionally. My heart stuttered. The shapes it made weren't like any plane or drone I'd ever known. And though I wanted to look away, some part of me knew I couldn't. That was the night I realized the world I thought I understood was just a surface, and beneath it, something else waited. The forest edge was quiet. A pale mist lingered over ground, curling around the bare roots. The air smelled damp, like earth and old leaves. I walked slowly, each step muffled by moss and fallen needles. Then I saw it, a light, soft, almost fragile, hovering just above the tree lean. It didn't sway like a lantern, didn't flicker like a candle. It hung there, impossibly still, as if waiting. I blinked, thinking it might vanish. It didn't. The trees seemed different near it. Branches bent subtly, stretching toward the glow. Shadows lengthened too far, reaching across the forest floor like dark fingers. A low hum vibrated in my chest. Not loud, but insistent. I felt it pulse with each heartbeat. I stepped closer. The light hovered silently, moving unnaturally, as though it knew I was coming. I couldn't look away. Every instinct in me screamed to run, but my feet stayed rooted. The humming deepened, and my lungs felt heavy with it. The forest around me shifted. A branch scraped the ground. Slow, deliberate. Leaves rustled above, though the air was still. I turned my head. Nothing. The light drifted farther from the path, over a patch of scorched grass. The smell of smoke hit me, faint and acrid. The grass curled, blackened tips reaching upward like frozen flames. I reached out, but the glow moved just beyond my fingers, and then it vanished. The silence returned suddenly. No hum, no movement, just the fog clinging to the earth. I blinked, uncertain if it had ever been there at all. The circle of scorched grass remained, a perfect ring in the soft green. I crouched, touched the edges. It was warm, almost alive, but no footprints led to it, no sign of anything that could have made it. The forest felt heavier, watching me in quiet. I pulled back, shivering. A breeze whispered through the trees, carrying the faintest trace of something sweet, metallic. It lingered on my tongue, then disappeared. I shivered again. Something was there, just beyond sight. I could feel its patience, its curiosity. The light, or whatever it was, had been deliberate, not accidental. It wanted me to see it, to follow. I took another step forward. The fog thickened, curling around my ankles. Branches scratched my arms as I passed, gentle but firm, like they were guiding me. The hum returned, softer now, as if sighing. Then it was gone. No glow, no heat, no hum, just a scorched circle, now empty. I stood there, alone, staring at it. The forest pressed in. Every shadow seemed alive, watching from the edges of fog. I felt my chest tighten. My eyes darted from shape to shape, expecting motion that never came. Yet the air hummed faintly, almost imperceptibly, as if the forest itself remembered the light. I realized I was holding my breath. A soft rustle, far behind me. I turned, slowly. Nothing but fog, and then a whisper almost drowned in the wind. Not words, just a hum, repeating inside my skull, inside my chest, inside my limbs. I stepped back toward the path, careful not to break the circle of scorched grass. My feet sank slightly in the damp earth. The mist thickened with each step. I could no longer see the edges of the forest, only the lingering emptiness where the light had been. I didn't look back. Not once, but I felt it hovering, silent, waiting, patient, watching me as I walked away toward the thin light of the road. And even now, sometimes in the corner of my vision, I see it again, a pale glow drifting at the edge of the trees, and the hum, soft, insistent, calling me back. The porch creaked under my weight. A thin fog rolled across the lawn, curling around the posts like fingers. The night smelled of damp wood and cold stone. I hadn't planned to be out here, but something drew me to the edge of the house. The radio, it wasn't even plugged in, and yet static crackle from the speaker, harsh and alive, filling the night. A faint whisper wove through it. At first, I thought it was the wind. Then I realized it was saying my name. Soft, repeated, a thread of sound threading through the static, slicing the quiet. I froze. The fog outside thickened. It pressed against the screen door, smudging the world beyond into white. Shadows shifted inside it, pacing just beyond sight. I could feel them, watching, patient. A door slammed upstairs, echoing, not loud enough to startle completely, but sharp enough to make my chest tighten. My hand trembled. I wasn't alone. I leaned closer to the radio, drawn despite myself. The static grew louder. The whispers became clearer. I couldn't understand the words, only the shapes of syllables stretching into something almost human. Every pulse of sound made my teeth vibrate. I stepped back. The porch railing was slick with dew. A chill ran up my spine. The fog swirled around my ankles. Somewhere unseen, something shuffled. I glanced toward the yard. Nothing moved, yet every shadow seemed too deep. The trees swayed even when the air was still. Branches scratched against each other like fingernails. The hum from the radio tangled with the whispering wind. I could almost feel shapes pressing through the fog. My name again, not whispered this time, not soft, insistent. I stepped closer, wanted to see who or what was speaking. The fog thickened, swallowing the yard in white. I could barely see my hands in front of my face. Something shifted near the edge of the porch. A presence, just beyond vision. I held my breath. Nothing moved. Then the air changed. A weight settled over me, heavy and patient. A step behind me. I didn't turn. Another step, and another, all perfectly timed with my own. I could feel the rhythm in my chest, matching the hum, matching my heartbeat. I wanted to call out. I wanted to run. I couldn't move. The radio's whisper softened. The static warped into long, low tones. They echoed inside my skull. Not outside. Inside. The fog clung to the porch now, spilling over the steps. I could hear soft breathing somewhere in the white. Shadows brushed against the corners of the windows. The door upstairs creaked again. A whisper from the speaker followed it like a response. My name, drawn long like a question. I stepped off the porch, feet sinking slightly into the damp grass. The whispers followed. Static shifted, stretching and bending as I moved. The fog thickened even more, curling around me, around the house. I felt small, alone, watched. The presence paced beside me, just out of view. No shape, only awareness. Something patient, calculating, waiting for me to step into it. I wanted to look. I wanted to see. But the air pressed against my eyes, against my skin. It was too much. The radio finally fell silent. No static, no whisper, no hum, only the fog and the soft scrape of branches. The night held its breath. I turned back toward the house. The porch was empty. The door upstairs was closed. Nothing remained to prove I had been followed. And yet, I could feel it, pacing still, watching from somewhere in the thick, white mist. I went inside, closed the door behind me. The house was quiet, but in the deepest corners where the shadows met the fog, I could still hear the faint, almost imperceptible hum. And my name, repeated once more, just soft enough to make me shiver. The street was quiet. Fog drifted low over the pavement, curling around the curb and swallowing the edges of the lawns. I saw my neighbor standing at the end of the street, waving. I waved back, a small smile, a nod. Then I blinked, and they were gone. The mist shifted. almost alive, curling where they had stood. I took a step forward, unsure if I had imagined it, but the footprints told me otherwise. Faint, wet marks pressed into the asphalt, glistening under the dim streetlight. They led forward and then stopped. Nothing. I followed them cautiously. The fog thickened, brushing against my ankles. Branches of nearby trees scratched the ground, whispering with each step. Something lingered just beyond sight. Watching, I looked up at the power lines. A shadow stretched unnaturally across the fog. Too long, too thin. It moved, though there was no wind. And when I blinked, it was gone again. The street lamp flickered. The mist seemed to curl around it, as if trying to push the light away. I felt my chest tighten. A strange weight pressed against my ribs. Something patient, waiting for me to notice it. I tried calling out, but my voice felt swallowed by the fog. It returned to me, soft and hollow, echoing back without form. I crouched, examining the footprints. They weren't human. They were too deep yet narrow, and the spacing uneven, like whoever or whatever had left them wasn't walking the way humans do. The silence stretched, only the soft scrape of a distant tree limb against the road. I sensed movement in the fog, shapes that disappeared the moment I turned. I kept walking, each step heavier than the last. The fog seemed to push me, as though it had a mind. Something hovered in its white folds. Watching, another blink, another moment of emptiness, and then a shadow again, near the edge of my vision. It crouched low, thin, and stretched too far, just like the first. I couldn't look directly at it. It would vanish. I reached the corner of the street. Houses blurred behind the mist. Everything seemed too quiet, too still. The footprints were gone. No trace of my neighbor. No trace of the shadow. But the sense of being followed lingered. Soft, patient, almost teasing. Every nerve in me screamed that I was not alone. I paused. The fog swirled higher, curling around my legs. A faint hum rose in the air, vibrating through my teeth. Something breathed near me. Not a person. Not anything I recognized. Just a presence, waiting for me to take the next step. I turned toward home. Every light along the street stretched thin through the mist. The hum continued, soft, insistent. It seemed to echo in the fog, forming shapes that disappeared before I could focus. A rustle near the power lines drew my eyes upward again. Nothing there, just a lingering shadow, bending unnaturally. Watching, I walked faster. The fog thickened, pressing against my chest. Every step seemed to match another, like someone invisible followed in perfect rhythm. The street twisted subtly, familiar signs shimmering as if the world itself was unsure of where it ended. When I reached my driveway, I stopped. The street behind me looked empty, the footprints gone, the mist curling gently in the air. And yet, I could feel the shadow there. I didn't look back. I never do. Not now. Inside, the light seemed softer, warmer, safer. But outside, the fog waits. The shadow waits. And sometimes when I glance toward the end of the street, I swear I see a figure, just a blur, raising its hand to wave. I blink, and it's gone. The old cemetery was empty. Bare stones leaned at odd angles, etched with names I could barely read. Fog clung to the ground like cold smoke, curling around the tombstones, thickening with each step I took. The air smelled of damp earth and something older, something faintly metallic. I walked slowly, my boots sinking slightly into the wet soil. Every step echoed softly, swallowed almost immediately by the fog. Shapes flickered between the gravestones. Just at the edge of sight, I blinked and they shifted, elongated like the mist itself was alive. A scraping sound reached my ears. Soft, deliberate like nails across stone. I froze. The sound stopped, and then it moved again. I held my breath. A lone lantern appeared, hovering above the ground. It glowed pale and uneven, as if breathing in rhythm with something unseen. The light moved slightly, then vanished, leaving only empty space and thicker fog. The silence that followed was heavy. Every shadow seemed to stretch farther than it should. The wind, or something like wind, whispered across the gravestones, brushing my cheeks and curling my hair around my face. I shivered. I took another step. The ground felt unstable, the mist curling higher around my knees. I could sense movement all around, though nothing materialized. Shapes brushed at the edge of my vision, just out of focus. I dared not turn my head. The scraping returned, closer this time. A long, deliberate pull across stone. I could feel it in my chest, a low vibration that made my ribs hum. A shadow moved between two leaning markers. Too fast, too fluid. The lantern appeared again, floating just above a grave, its light pale and sickly. It hovered for a moment, then drifted sideways, disappearing into fog. The scraping followed, now behind me, echoing softly as if the stones themselves were breathing. I stopped. The air was cold against my skin, damp in my lungs. The fog thickened, wrapping around my arms, pressing against my shoulders. I could barely see the ground beneath my feet. The cemetery seemed endless, folding in on itself, every stone stretching into the mist. I thought I heard whispers, faint and low, carried on the fog. Not words, exactly, not comprehensible, just sounds, soft syllables vibrating against the back of my skull. I swallowed. The fog seemed to lean closer, curious, patient. A sudden shift. The mist parted slightly, and I glimpsed something. No more than a flicker, a figure standing behind a tombstone. Not solid, more like a shadow wrapped in fog. I took a cautious step forward. It vanished. The scraping stopped. The lantern reappeared, this time hovering over a patch of scorched grass between the stones. It pulsed softly, almost like breathing. I reached out, but the fog thickened instantly, swallowing the lantern's light. My heart raced. The cemetery seemed to stretch even farther, rows of stones bending in ways that made no sense. A cold breeze touched my neck, carried with it a whisper of something old, watching, patient. I turned, thinking I'd leave, but the path behind me was gone, folded into the fog. I could feel shapes brushing against me now. Not solid, not warm, but aware, hovering near, just beyond reach. Their presence pressed against my skin, my ears, my chest. The scraping returned, soft, deliberate, echoing as if the stones themselves were alive. A final glimpse of the lantern. It floated above a narrow path that hadn't been there before, leading deeper into the cemetery. I didn't step forward. I could feel the fog pulsing, waiting for me to make a choice. Curiosity fought with the instinct to run. I turned back. The gravestones behind me shifted slightly. The fog curled higher, hiding everything I knew. And then, silence. The scraping stopped. The lantern disappeared. The whispers faded. Only the fog remained, thick and patient, curling around my ankles, clinging to the ground, waiting. I hurried home. Every step pressed into the damp soil, leaving footprints that disappeared almost immediately in the mist. The cemetery seemed to watch me leave, bending in impossible ways, stretching beyond the edges of sight. That night, I couldn't sleep. The scraping echoed softly in my mind. The lantern's pale glow lingered behind my eyelids. And the fog seemed to seep into my thoughts. Pressing, patient, waiting. The cornfield stretched farther than I remembered. Rows of stalks swayed gently, though the air was still. A faint mist hovered over the ground, curling between the rigid stems. The night smelled of wet earth, decaying leaves, and something faintly sweet I couldn't name. I walked slowly along the edge, boots pressing into soft soil. Each step made the stalks rustle, but some rustling did not come from me. Shadows shifted between the rows. Tall, thin, taller than any man I knew. Silent, patient, watching. I stopped. The rustling continued, though the air was motionless. Branches of corn bent slightly as if acknowledging some unseen weight. A faint hum pulsed in my chest, slow and deliberate, like a heartbeat not my own. I stepped forward. The stalks bent toward me, curling around my arms. Something moved just out of sight, keeping pace, always just beyond my vision. I blinked. Nothing. The moon peeked through a thin layer of clouds. Its light made the shadows bend oddly across the ground, stretching longer than they should. I felt a weight in the darkness, not just behind me, Not just beside me. All around. A soft scrape sounded from the rows ahead. Metallic, like fingernails across stalks. I froze. The air grew heavy. The mist wrapped around my legs, curling higher, brushing against my knees. I tried to follow the sound, but the stalks seemed to shift as I moved. Paths I thought I saw disappeared, replaced by walls of green and shadow. The rustling followed me. Every step echoed with it, even when I was alone. A shape loomed taller now, between the rows. Not solid, but enough to make my heart skip. Its presence pressed against the edges of my mind. Patient, watching, waiting. I took another step. The shadows bent again. The mist swirled, brushing against my skin, cold and damp. A whisper, almost lost in the rustling, tickled my ear. Not words, just awareness. Something acknowledging me. The moonlight shifted. I caught glimpses of tall shapes moving farther than any human should. They didn't run. They didn't walk. They glided or waited, silent. I wanted to turn back, but the rows seemed endless. Every step I took forward, the shadows moved with me. The rustling pulsed with each heartbeat. My chest throbbed, the hum of my ribs intensifying. The mist grew thicker. I couldn't see the edge of the field. Only stalks, only shadows, only the soft rustling following me. Then a sudden quiet. The rustling stopped abruptly. The shapes froze. The moonlight left the field. I blinked. Nothing moved. The mist thinned slightly, curling around my ankles. The air felt lighter, but I knew they were still there, patient, waiting. I hurried to the edge, boots sinking in soft earth, mist curling higher with each step. When I reached the road, the cornfield seemed empty, no shapes, no rustling, only the lingering weight of being watched. That night, in my bedroom, I could still feel it, the shadows between the rows, the hum in my chest, and the quiet, patient presence, waiting for me to return. The lane was shrouded in fog. It curled around the fences, the telephone poles, around the uneven pavement beneath my feet. The night smelled faintly of wet grass and something warmer, something sweet I couldn't place. I walked slowly, careful with each step, and then I saw them, a small child, standing in the middle of the lane. The mist curled around them, pale and almost glowing. I didn't recognize them, but the voice, soft, clear, carried straight to me. Your name? I froze. The words floated in the fog, unmistakable. Not whispered, not distant. Spoken clearly. The child repeated it. My name. I stepped closer. The mist swirled around their small frame, curling like tendrils. Every instinct in me told me to step back, but I couldn't look away. The child smiled. A faint, knowing smile that didn't belong on a face I'd never seen before. Come, they said softly. I wanted to reach out, to understand. I didn't. They vanished. Where they had been, only fog remained. I bent closer. The ground was wet, cold. Tiny footprints pressed into pavement, leading toward my doorstep. I followed, breath caught in my chest. The fog seemed heavier as I walked. It clung to my ankles, pressing against my shoes, curling up my legs. I could feel a presence beside me, just at the edge of sight, patient, observing. The footprints led straight to my door. Each step was impossibly small, yet deliberate. I knelt, examining them. No other traces of a child, no sound, no movement, only the footprints and the lingering mist. The lane behind me was silent. No fog curling, no rustling, only the quiet hum of the night pressing against my ears. I stood, shaking. The footprints led to the threshold, then stopped. The air smelled faintly metallic now, cold on my tongue. I touched the door. It was ordinary, solid, yet I felt the small presence, just beyond the wood. I tried to calm my racing heart. I told myself it was imagination, a trick of the fog. But the memory of the voice lingered, soft, insistent, calling me. I stepped back. The fog outside seemed thicker now, curling higher against the window panes. Shadows leaned closer to the corners of the porch. Something brushed against my arm, light, deliberate, impossible. I wanted to run. I didn't. The footprints remained in my mind. Tiny, precise, impossible. Each one pressing toward me, then stopping. The child had vanished. But the lane, the fog, the patient presence remained. I could hear soft footsteps in the mist. Not my own, not human. They moved just behind me, matching every step I took. I didn't turn. The lane stretched endlessly. The fog thickened with each passing moment, curling tighter, pressing closer. The hum grew in my chest, low and steady. The night itself seemed to breathe, waiting for me to make a move. I stepped inside my house, closed the door carefully. The fog pressed against the glass. The footprints stopped at the threshold, but I could feel them, patient, watching, always outside. Later, in my room, the memory returned, the soft, clear voice repeating my name, the knowing smile of a child who should not exist, the footprints leading straight to my door, the fog lingering in every corner of the lane. Even now, when the night is still, I sometimes hear it, a small voice calling my name, soft, patient, insistent, from the fog outside my window. I do not look. I do not step outside. But the lane waits, and the child waits. The night was still. The air smelled faintly of wet earth and cold metal. I stood at the edge of the field, fog curling at my ankles, breathing it in slowly, feeling it press against my skin. Above me, the sky was darker than usual, the clouds thin and pale, stretched tight across the horizon. And then I saw them. Lights. Strange, unnatural lights, flashing in perfect synchrony over the town. Red, blue, white, each pulse deliberate, directed, at me. I froze. The hum started low in my chest, almost imperceptible, like a heartbeat beneath the earth. Each flash sent it climbing, vibrating through my bones. I could feel in my teeth a low resonance I could not ignore. The lights moved, slowly, almost imperceptibly, hovering above the streets, above the rooftops, stretching beyond the trees. They weren't random. They were signaling, counting, waiting, observing. I blinked. The fog swirled tighter around my legs, brushing soft against my knees. Shadows stretched under the pale light of the flashes. Every familiar shape twisted, leaning slightly toward the glow, waiting for me to notice. The hum grew louder, not in air, but inside my chest, my skull, my limbs. Every pulse of the lights pressed against me, synchronizing with my heartbeat, with my breath. I wanted to step back, but curiosity rooted me to the ground. The lights blinked in rhythm, almost teasing, almost alive. Every pattern felt deliberate, as though they were learning me, studying me, calling me closer. I raised my hand. The hum rose again, low and insistent, vibrating through my fingers. The lights flickered faster, answering. A strange pulse, almost communicative. I swallowed hard. My throat was dry. The fog whispered around me, curling up my arms, brushing my face, cold and damp. The town below lay quiet, unaware. Cars parked in driveways, windows glowing faintly. No one else noticed. Only me, only the hum, only the lights. I stepped forward. The ground was soft, dew dampening my shoes. Shadows bent oddly beneath the trees at the edge of the field. Something brushed past my shoulder, light, deliberate, but vanished before I could see it. The lights pulsed faster. Each flash drew me further, closer to the edge of the field. The hum resonated, building, until it felt like it might crack my chest open. I held my hand to my ribs, feeling the rhythm, feeling the pull. A distant crow cawed, harsh and sudden. The fog shivered around me, rising to knee height, then falling again. The lights blinked in response, a strange counterpoint to the bird's cry. Something watched from the tree-line. I felt it, patient and curious, just beyond the fog. I wanted to run, but my feet refused. Every flash, every hum, every pulse seemed to draw me forward, whispering, calling, insisting. Then the light stopped. All at once. The sky went dark, silent, empty. The hum vanished. The fog hung still, curling against my ankles, pressing patient. I blinked. For a moment, Everything seemed normal. The field was quiet. The trees held their shapes. The town below glowed softly, unchanged. But the memory remained, the strange, deliberate pulsing, the hum inside my chest, the feeling of being observed, studied, the lights waiting. Even now, when the night is still, I sometimes see them again, flashing in rhythm over the town, above the rooftops, calling me, patient, insistent, and the hum, low, deep inside my chest, inside my skull, inside my limbs, reminding me that I am not alone. Not yet. The hallway was quiet. The night pressed against the windows, soft and cold. I paused before the mirror on the wall, tall, narrow, and old. Its surface gleamed faintly in the pale light from the lamp behind me. At first, nothing seemed wrong. My reflection moved as I did. I breathed. I shifted my weight. The mirror followed. But then it didn't. A subtle delay. A twitch in the corner of the mouth. My reflection's eyes lingered too long, unblinking, focused somewhere behind me. A smile appeared where mine did not. Small, almost polite, but wrong. I leaned closer, watching. Every breath I took, the mirror hesitated. Then the smile widened. A slow, deliberate curl of lips. A face almost like mine, but not mine. And the eyes, cold, waiting. I stepped back. The reflection mimicked, almost perfectly, but that smile remained. It didn't match my own. I blinked. When I opened my eyes, it was still there, grinning, patient. A soft hum filled the room, low, vibrating in my teeth. The air seemed heavier near the glass. I could feel it pressing against my chest. A shadow stretched across the wall behind me. But it was mine, wasn't it? Or was it? I raised a hand slowly. The reflection raised its hand too, but slightly out of sync, a fraction of a second too late. The smile widened again, slow, knowing. I tried to look away. The hall behind me remained dark, still, but I could feel it watching, waiting. Every nerve in my body told me to run. I didn't. The hum deepened, vibrating the walls, the floor under my feet. The reflection leaned closer. I leaned back instinctively, heart hammering. Its eyes followed me, unblinking, almost amused. I whispered, though no words formed clearly. Why? No answer, only the smile and the delay. A subtle, wrong motion that made my stomach twist. I stepped closer again. The air grew colder. Faint frost brushed my cheeks, though the room was warm. The reflection didn't match my movements. It tilted its head slightly, a deliberate, teasing motion. The smile, wider now, sharper. Almost human. Almost something else. I felt my chest tighten. The hum pulsed, synchronized with my heartbeat. Slow, insistent. I wanted to touch the glass. I wanted to see if it was solid, but every instinct warned me not to. A soft creak behind me made me whirl around. Nothing moved. The hallway remained empty. The reflection remained. Patient, waiting. I leaned closer one last time. The air pressed against my face. The hum filled my skull. The reflection's eyes held mine, almost too well. A shiver ran down my spine. I stepped back. The mirror returned to normal for a heartbeat. My movements aligned. The smile vanished, but I knew it was still there, watching, patient, waiting for me to blink. I left the hallway, closed the door softly behind me. The house felt quiet, but the memory lingered. Even in the deepest shadows, I could see that smile, feel the delay, hear the faint hum vibrating in my chest. Even now, when the lights are out and the world is still, I sometimes catch it, a flash of movement, a subtle wrongness, a whisper behind my eyes. And the mirror waits, always waits. The fog swallowed the road before me. Streetlights bent and shimmered through the mist, their light twisted and soft, almost unreal. The asphalt was wet, black and gleaming, reflecting the pale glow like a shallow river. I gripped the steering wheel tighter, the hum of the engine low, constant, grounding. Signs twisted as I passed them. Letters melted into shapes I couldn't read. Arrows curved impossibly, pointing nowhere. I blinked. The fog shifted, curling higher around the tires, pressing in from both sides. Then, up ahead, a truck, abandoned, blocking the road. Its dark metal glistened with moisture. I slammed the brakes. My heart jumped. The headlights revealed no one inside. I stepped out. The air was cold, damp, smelling faintly of earth and rust. The fog clung to my legs, curling up to my knees. I approached the truck cautiously. The seats were warm, but no one was there. A soft scraping sound came from somewhere behind me. I turned. Nothing, just a fog, thick and patient. The road twisted again, impossible and unfamiliar. I tried to look around, to make sense of it. The truck remained silent, waiting. I reached for the door handle. The truck vanished. The fog thickened. I could barely see my own hands. The road stretched endlessly in front of me, twisting, shifting. Every turn seemed to lead me in circles. A faint hum rose in my chest, slow and insistent. Not from the engine, not from the world outside. Inside me, beating in rhythm with my pulse. I took a deep breath. The smell of wet asphalt mixed with something sharper, metal, ozone, electricity. Every sense heightened, nerves humming with tension. Something moved in the fog at the edge of my vision. Just a shadow. Patient. Waiting. I stepped back into the car. Doors clicking shut. The fog pressed against the windows. I could feel it outside, curling around the vehicle like fingers, gentle but deliberate. The hum inside me grew louder, vibrating through my teeth, my ribs, my skull. I drove slowly. The road twisted again. Signs shimmered and bent, letters dissolving into light. I blinked. The truck appeared again in the distance, blocking the path. No one inside. I stopped. The warmth of the seats lingered, impossibly persistent. The fog swirled thicker around the tires, curling higher, pressing against the glass. I didn't move. The hum pulsed, steady, insistent. I blinked. The truck was gone. The road stretched endlessly before me. The fog thickened, curling around the wheels, pressing into the undercarriage. Shadows leaned toward me from the sides, bending impossibly under the dim glow of the distorted signs. I could feel them, watching, patient. I gripped the wheel tighter. Every instinct screamed to turn back, but the road was unmarked. No signs, no familiar landmarks. Only the fog, only the hum, only the impossible shifting of everything around me. I pressed the accelerator. The tires cut through the mist. Shadows danced along the edges. The hum resonated louder, deeper, vibrating in my teeth and chest. I couldn't escape it. Then, suddenly, the fog thinned slightly. The road stretched straight ahead. No truck, no shadows, nothing but wet asphalt and the pale glow of bending streetlights. I exhaled. The hum subsided, leaving a faint echo in my chest. But the memory of the warmth in the empty truck remained. The impossible shifting signs. The fog that seemed to move faster than I could. Even now, when I drive at night on familiar roads, I feel it. That patient presence. Waiting, watching. And the memory of the truck, warm, empty, impossible, lingers in my chest. The diner was nearly empty. Fluorescent lights hummed softly overhead, buzzing in a rhythm that made my teeth vibrate. The scent of coffee and fried grease lingered in the air, sharp, warm, and oddly comforting. I sat alone in a booth by the window, the vinyl cold beneath my palms. Outside, the fog pressed against the glass, curling along the edges of the window pane. And then I saw it, a figure, pale and thin, standing just beyond the diner's light, watching, silent. The fog swirled around them, hiding details, shaping the shadow into something human, but not quite. I blinked. When I opened my eyes, they were closer. Each time I looked away, the figure vanished. Each time I glanced back, they were there again, patient and still. My hands shook slightly. I told myself it was a trick of the light, a shadow moving with the fog. But the figure's gaze, I could feel it, piercing, cold, watching me, waiting. The humming of the fluorescent lights seemed to sync with my heartbeat, soft, insistent, every pulse pressed against my chest. The diner smelled sharper now. Coffee bitter, metal warm. The air carrying a faint metallic tang that made my throat dry. I sipped my coffee, trying to calm my shaking hands. The figure remained outside, silent, motionless, but their presence pressed against the glass, watching every move, waiting. I looked away for a moment, focusing on the empty booths, the polished floor. When I glanced back, the figure was closer still, fog curling around their shoulders, eyes faintly visible, pale, reflecting the diner's light like shards of glass. I swallowed hard. My throat felt tight. The chair creaked under me as I shifted slightly, but the figure didn't move, didn't breathe, only the soft pulse of presence, patient, insistent. I wanted to leave. I told myself I would, but every instinct screamed to stay, to see. Curiosity and fear tangled in my chest, twisting my breath. I sipped again. The fog outside thickened, curling higher around the figure's feet. They didn't move, yet somehow drew closer with each blink. Shadows stretched toward the diner, bending unnaturally in the pale glow of the streetlight. I could feel their gaze on my neck, my shoulders, pressing down gently but unrelentingly. The hum in my chest rose, deep and low, vibrating in my teeth, my ribs, my limbs. I dared not turn, though every nerve in me wanted to. The fog shifted. The figure vanished for a moment, leaving only a faint impression in the swirling white. I blinked, and they were back, closer now, their eyes reflecting the light, waiting. I set down the cup. The steam from the coffee curled upward, almost brushing my face, warm and sweet against the chill outside. The figure did not move, yet I could feel the air vibrating around them. A pulse, a breath, something patient, deliberate. I left the booth slowly, feet careful on the slick tiles. The figure remained outside, staring, waiting, pale in the fog. Each blink brought them closer. Each blink made the glass feel heavier against my chest. I opened the door. The diner's warmth fled immediately, replaced by the chill of fog curling around me. The figure had vanished. I stepped back inside, closed the door softly. The warmth returned. The lights hummed, but the memory remained. The pale figure, the fog curling around them, their patient, insistent gaze. And even now, in the quiet hours, I sometimes feel them outside, waiting. The forest swallowed the path behind me. Fog curled between the trunks, thick and slow, clinging to the undergrowth. The air smelled of wet moss and old bark, with a faint metallic tang that made my chest tighten. I walked carefully, each step soft on the damp earth, listening. At first, nothing, only the low hum of the night, the distant rustle of leaves. Then whispers, soft, drifting through the trees, threading around the trunks, curling along the fog. My name, repeated, but not softly, not kindly. The whispers carried secrets I had never spoken, words I had never thought aloud. They floated between the trees, patient, deliberate. I froze. The fog curled high around my legs, brushing soft against my knees. Branches scraped gently across my arms, deliberate, teasing. Shadows leaned closer in the dim light, bending unnaturally beneath the canopy. I took a cautious step forward. The whispers grew louder, yet still faint, as though carried on the fog itself. Every syllable pressed against my chest, vibrating in my ribs. The forest seemed to breathe with me, pulsing in rhythm with a hum that had begun low in my chest. A shape moved between the trees. Too thin, too long. Silent. I caught glimpses out of the corner of my eye. It shifted whenever I looked directly at it, almost playful, almost aware. The whispers changed, layering over one another, voices overlapping. Soft, curious, patient. Every secret I had buried, every thought I had never spoken, drifted through the mist. I shivered, cold despite my coat, cold inside my chest. I stepped back. The fog curled around my ankles like fingers patient, pressing gently upward. I could feel eyes on me. Not one pair. Many, hovering just beyond sight, in the mist, in the shadows, in the corners of the trees. A soft scrape sounded near my feet. Leaves rustled. A branch shifted. I dared not look. The forest leaned in closer. Patient. Waiting. The whispers repeated my name again. softly, almost lost in the hum of the fog. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed to flee, but my feet stayed rooted and the whispers followed. I turned slowly. Mist curled around my face. A shadow passed through the fog, tall and thin, bending impossibly. The whispers carried secrets again, things I had never told, things I had never dared think aloud. Every word pressed inside my chest, vibrating with the hum, deep in my bones. The trees shifted, branches arched, forming shapes that almost looked like hands, reaching toward me. Shadows moved in sequence with the whispers. The fog thickened, curling higher around my legs, around my torso, pressing close, intimate, deliberate. I whispered back. Not words, not sound, only breath. The fog carried it anyway, mingling with the voices. They paused for a moment, listening, then continued. I felt movement behind me. Soft steps, synchronized with my own. I didn't turn. I couldn't. The forest held me in its fog, patient, waiting, aware. I stumbled forward, pushing through the mist. The whispers followed. Branches brushed my face. Shadows leaned closer, pressing, stretching beyond sense. The hum in my chest grew, synchronized with each whispered syllable. Finally, the trees began to thin. The edge of the forest appeared. The fog stayed low here, curling along the grass, patient, deliberate. The whispers faded slightly, leaving only the soft hum lingering in my ribs. I glanced back once. Shadows lingered at the edge of the trees, bending impossibly. The fog swirled, holding shapes I could not name. Patient, waiting. I didn't look again. I stepped into the clearing, toward the quiet lights of home. But the whispers never fully left. Even now, late at night, I can hear them drifting in the corners of my mind, repeating secrets I have never spoken. Calling, patient, silent. The forest waits, and it remembers. The old barn had always seemed ordinary. Faded wood, rusted hinges, the faint smell of hay. But tonight, in the fog curling along the fields, something was different. A door, narrow, pale, almost glowing, stood where none had been before. I hesitated. The night pressed against my skin, cold and damp. The fog wrapped around my ankles, curling up the worn boards. I could feel the weight of the air, patient and deliberate, pressing against my chest. I reached for the handle. It was smooth, impossibly warm under my fingers. A shiver ran down my spine. The door was solid, real, yet somehow alive. I opened it, and the world shifted. Beyond the frame was not the barn, not the field, not the familiar dark. Only endless black, stretching beyond sight. It had depth, weight, the faintest hint of movement, as if the darkness breathed. I stepped closer. The air inside the doorway pulsed gently, whispering. It smelled faintly metallic, like ozone after rain, and something softer, sweet, almost human. A low hum rose in my chest, vibrating in my ribs and teeth. I leaned into it, curiosity battling fear. The darkness seemed to respond, shifting, curling, patient, watching. A shadow moved within the void, stretching impossibly. Not solid, not fixed, but aware. It twisted slowly, curling toward me like a question. I took a deep breath. The fog outside the barn pressed against my legs. The old wood under my hands creaked faintly, almost impatient. The hum deepened, synchronized with my heartbeat. I could feel it pulling, drawing me closer. I stepped back. The barn returned. The fog, the fields, the door remained pale and still, patient. I leaned closer again. The void stretched endlessly, a black so deep it seemed to devour the barn's light. The hum inside me pulsed faster. A faint whisper teased along the edges of my hearing. I didn't recognize the words. They were ancient, patient, deliberate. I reached out, fingertips brushing the frame. The air inside the doorway curled around me, pulling gently, softly. It was not hostile. It was inviting. But the invitation carried weight, a promise I could not comprehend. I stepped back fully. The fog swirled around the barn, curling higher, brushing my face. The hum lingered inside my chest. The shadow inside the void shifted again, patient, waiting. I could feel it watching. I closed the door. The barn returned fully. The night outside remained still, silent, familiar. The fog pressed lower now, patient, curling along the boards. Even now I can feel it. The door waits, patient, watching. The void beyond stretches endlessly, calling. And I know if I return, it will be there again, waiting, patient, silent. The radio sat on the windowsill, old, battered, the cord frayed where it touched the table. I had never plugged it in before. But tonight, curiosity pressed against me, patient and insistent. I turned the dial slowly. A low static has filled the room. Not loud, not harsh, just enough to crawl along the edges of my ears, curling into the quiet. And then I heard it, a voice, soft, distorted, repeating my name. I froze. The hum in my chest started low, almost imperceptible, vibrating faintly in my ribs. The static pulsed with it, a strange rhythm, deliberate and precise. Outside, the fog pressed against the windows, curling upward. I leaned closer to the radio. The voice became clearer, though still warped, fragmented. Then a countdown. Numbers, distorted and drawn out. 1, 2, 3. Outside, the streetlights flickered in rhythm with the numbers. I could see the shadows and the fog pulse as the countdown continued. My heartbeat quickened. The hum inside me rose, deep and insistent. I tried to turn the dial, to silence it. The numbers repeated, relentless, patient. And the streetlights continued their strange flicker. I could feel them watching, aware of my every breath. The air smelled faintly metallic. The fog pressed closer, curling around the walls of the house. Every shadow leaned toward the window, bending unnaturally in the dim light. I stepped back from the radio. The hum in my chest vibrated louder, synchronized with the countdown. The numbers crawled over the static, reaching 0. But the lights didn't stop flickering. The rhythm continued, like the world itself was breathing in time with the radio. I pressed my hand to the glass. The fog curled against it, patient, deliberate. The shadows in the street seemed to twist and bend closer. Every pulse from the radio echoed through the walls, the floor, the air. I could hear soft footsteps outside, matching the rhythm. Patient, deliberate. I dared not open the door. I dared not look fully. The countdown restarted, slow, precise, and the hum in my chest deepened, vibrating in my teeth, my ribs, my skull. The streetlights flickered again in perfect synchronization. The fog thickened, curling higher, pressing against the house like it had weight. I wanted to leave the room. I wanted to shut the window, but the voice persisted, whispering my name, repeating, patient, insistent. I leaned closer to the window. The street outside shimmered through the fog. Every shadow bent toward the house, stretching impossibly. The countdown pulsed again, the numbers crawling through the static, and hum inside me kept pace. I stepped back slowly. The radio hissed, static filling the room. The countdown reached 0 again. The lights blinked. The fog swirled against the glass. I could feel eyes pressing through the mist. Patient, waiting, aware of me. The hum in my chest grew, deep and low, vibrating through my body. I unplugged the radio. The static stopped. The countdown vanished, but the fog remained. The shadows lingered. And the hum stayed, deep in my chest, a reminder that the presence outside had not left. Even now, when the night is still, I can feel it. Outside, waiting, patient, silent. The fog pressed against the street tonight, thick and heavy, curling around the lampposts and sidewalks, brushing my ankles as I walked. The air smelled faintly of wet asphalt and something colder, metal, or maybe fear itself. I walked slowly, boots muffled on the damp pavement. Each step echoed softly, swallowed immediately by the fog. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, slow, matching mine. I froze. The fog swirled around my legs, patient and deliberate. Each footfall behind me echoed, synchronized, like a mirror of my own. I swallowed hard. The hum in my chest began low, insistent, vibrating in my ribs. I quickened my pace slightly. The footsteps followed, matching every step, every shift of weight. I turned my head. Nothing. Only fog. Only shadows bending unnaturally in the dim glow of the streetlights. I tried to tell myself it was the wind, a trick of the damp night. But every nerve in my body screamed otherwise. The footsteps moved with me, patient, aware, deliberate. I stopped. They stopped. The fog wrapped tighter around my legs, curling upward, pressing gently. A cold breath brushed my neck. I spun around. Nothing. I walked again, slower this time. The footsteps followed. Soft, light, exact. The street seemed to stretch endlessly. Familiar houses disappeared behind me. Every lamppost twisted slightly, bending toward the fog, toward the sound of those steps. I wanted to run, but fear slowed me. Curiosity, too. The steps continued, patient, insistent, matching mine. A shadow flickered at the edge of the fog. Tall, thin, bending impossibly. I dare not look fully. Only glimpses. Just out of the corner of my eye, the hum in my chest grew louder. Low, deep, synchronized with the footsteps. I could feel it vibrating through my teeth, my ribs, my legs. The fog pressed closer. I stopped again. The footsteps stopped with me. The street was silent except for the fog curling around the curbs. The cold air brushed my face, metallic and damp. I dared not move. I tried to call out. My voice died in my throat. The fog swallowed sound. But the steps resumed, faint, patient, always behind me. I walked faster. The fog thickened, curling higher, brushing my knees, my thighs. Shadows leaned closer at the edges, stretching impossibly. The footsteps followed. I glanced behind me once. Nothing. No one. Yet the steps matched mine exactly. I reached my driveway. The fog swirled, patient. The footsteps didn't stop until I stepped inside. The door closed softly behind me. Silence. Only the hum lingered, deep in my chest, echoing in my skull. The fog remained outside, patient, curling around the edges of the house. The steps never returned, but I could still feel them. Every heartbeat, every breath. Patient, waiting, always behind me. Even now, late at night, I sometimes hear it. Soft, exact footsteps, echoing in the fog. Following, patient, silent. The house stood at the end of the lane. Abandoned, empty, windows dark, staring like hollow eyes into the fog that curled around the yard. The air smelled of damp wood and something older, decay, dust, and the faint metallic tang of rust. I stepped onto the porch. The boards creaked softly beneath my feet. No wind, no movement. Yet the house seemed alive, watching. I pushed the door open slowly. It groaned, protesting. Inside, the air was colder, heavier than the fog outside. Shadows leaned along the walls, bending unnaturally in the pale light that filtered through cracked windows. I walked quietly. Every step echoed softly, swallowed immediately by the silence. Doors creaked somewhere above me. No wind, no one, just the house breathing. Patient, waiting. A shadow passed across the wall to my left. Too swift, too deliberate. I froze. The hum in my chest began low, vibrating in my ribs, deep and insistent. I moved again, slowly, careful. The floorboards felt softer beneath my weight, almost alive. Shadows stretched and twisted, leaning closer as I passed. A door shifted slightly in the hallway ahead. No wind, no sound beyond the faint creak. Yet the movement was deliberate. I reached the staircase. Soft footsteps echoed above me. Not mine. Patient, matching my own pulse. I want to call out. The sound died in my throat. Every instinct screamed to leave. But I couldn't move fast enough. The house seemed to stretch, bending, folding in on itself, rooms elongating beyond comprehension. I climbed the stairs slowly. The wood groaned beneath my hands. The air was thick, pressing against my skin, damp and cold. Shadows leaned from the walls, shifting, patient, deliberate. I could feel eyes on me. Not human. Waiting. I reached the top. The hallway stretched impossibly long. Doors on either side. Shadows flickered behind each one. I could hear faint breathing. Not mine. Something else. Patient. Watching. A soft brush against my arm made me whirl. Nothing. Only the silence. Only the shifting shadows curling closer. I moved toward the end of the hallway. The final door was slightly ajar. I reached for it, hand trembling. The air around me thickened, pulsing with a hum inside my chest. I could feel it vibrating through my ribs, my skull, my teeth. I opened the door fully. The room was empty. Pale walls, faded furniture. Yet the shadows shifted as I entered, bending unnaturally across the floor and ceiling. I could hear soft footsteps behind me, circling, deliberate. I dared not turn. I knew they matched mine. Patient, waiting. I stepped back. The door slammed softly behind me. No wind, no sound, just the house breathing, patient, alive, silent. I turned to leave. The hallway stretched impossibly again. The stairs seemed further away. Shadows leaned closer, curling toward me, patient, insistent. I ran, softly as best I could. The house seemed to exhale behind me, the air thick and heavy. The door at the end of the hall creaked open and closed in rhythm with my pulse. Finally, I reached the stairs. The air lightened slightly as I descended. I could feel the shadows lingering, patient, watching. I stepped onto the porch again. The night air pressed against my skin, cold and damp. The fog curled around the yard, wrapping the house like fingers. Silent, patient, waiting. Even now, when the night is still, I remember the soft footsteps circling, the creaking doors, the shadows leaning, patient, deliberate, the house alive, breathing. And I know if I return, it will be waiting, silent, patient, watching. The lake lay still under the pale moonlight. Mist curled along its surface, thick and slow, like breath escaping from the water itself. The air smelled of wet reeds, moss, and something faintly sweet I couldn't name. I walked along the shore, boots pressing into the soft, damp earth. A low hum rose from the water. At first, subtle, almost imperceptible. Then stronger, vibrating through my chest, resonating in my teeth, curling down my spine. It was steady, patient, deliberate. Ripples formed on the surface, not from the wind, not from my steps. Shapes, shifting, elongated, impossible, slid just beneath the water. Each one disappeared when I blinked, leaving the surface smooth again. I stepped closer. The fog pressed higher, curling around my ankles, brushing my legs. The hum grew louder, synchronized with my heartbeat. Every nerve in me screamed to step back. Every instinct told me to run. A shape moved near the reeds. Tall, thin, bending impossibly. I caught it in the corner of my eye. But when I looked directly, it vanished, leaving only the soft ripple in the water. I leaned closer to the shore. The hum vibrated in my chest, low and insistent. The water shimmered faintly, as though reflecting something unseen. A cold breeze brushed my face, carrying the scent of wet earth and something older, deeper, patient. I reached toward the water. The ripples shifted, curling around my fingers, gentle, deliberate, not threatening, not inviting, but aware, watching. The fog thickened. Every sound, the rustle of reeds, the distant call of bird, was muted, swallowed by the low hum and the curling mist. Shadows leaned closer along the shore, bending toward the water, stretching impossibly. I could feel eyes on me, patient, observing. I stepped back. The shapes beneath the water vanished. The hum persisted, vibrating through my bones, through my skull, through my ribs. I could feel it pressing against my chest, patient, deliberate. A ripple spread across the lake, not from wind, not from movement, just awareness. The fog curled higher, brushing my legs, my waist. The hum rose in volume, synchronized with my heartbeat. I wanted to leave. I wanted to run. But my feet felt heavy, rooted to the soft earth, the cold fog curling higher. I took a deep breath. The water shimmered again, faintly, impossibly. A shadow brushed the surface, elongated, bending impossibly toward me. I swallowed hard. The hum pressed harder inside me. I stepped away. The fog followed, curling along my ankles, pressing gently. The shapes beneath the water remained unseen, but I could feel them. Patient, waiting. The hum lingered, vibrating through my body, soft, insistent, aware. Finally, I reached the trees. The mist thinned slightly. The hum receded, low and distant, though it remained in my chest. The lake lay still again, silent, patient. Even now, when I lie awake, I can hear it, a low hum beneath the night. Ripples forming in water I cannot see. Shadows waiting just beyond sight. Patient, deliberate, silent. And I know if I return, the lake will be there, waiting, humming, watching. The field stretched endlessly under the pale moon. Fog pressed low against the ground, curling around the tall grass like soft fingers. The air smelled of wet soil and something metallic, faintly sharp, pressing against my chest. I walked slowly, careful not to disturb the silence. Then I saw them. Lights. Tiny, bright points in the distance, blinking in sequence. Not random. Deliberate. Almost communicative. I paused. The hum rose in my chest, low, insistent, vibrating through my ribs, teeth, skull. Each blink of the lights matched the rhythm of my heartbeat. Almost. They seemed to watch me, to respond. I stepped forward. The fog curled around my legs, patient and deliberate, pressing higher. The grass brushed my knees, damp and cold. The lights blinked again in perfect sequence. A pulse. A question. I blinked. The lights blinked back. My stomach tightened. The hum in my chest grew louder, synchronized with the blinking. The shadows in the field bent oddly beneath the glow. Long, impossible angles stretching toward me. I moved closer. The lights blinked faster. Every pulse seemed directed at me. A response. I held my breath, listening to the low hum vibrating in my chest. The fog thickened. Shadows leaned closer, bending toward the sequence of lights. Each blink seemed alive, aware. A language I couldn't understand, but felt in every nerve. I stepped forward again. The lights blinked in sequence. Faster, responding to my steps. The hum rose, deep in my bones, vibrating in sync with each pulse. I stopped. The lights blinked back at me, patient, deliberate. The fog pressed higher around my ankles, swirling like fingers curling softly. Shadows stretched across the field, impossible shapes, bending toward me. A cold breeze brushed my face. The lights blinked faster. The hum deepened, resonating in my chest, my teeth, my skull. I could feel in my fingertips, in my legs. I took a careful step forward. The lights blinked again. 1, 2, 3. A sequence repeating, almost teasing. Patient, deliberate, aware. I reached the edge of the field. The fog swirled higher, pressing against my knees. The lights blinked in response to my movement, almost mimicking me. Every blink, every pulse, synchronized with a hum vibrating inside me. I dare not look away. Each time I did, the sequence shifted, waiting for my attention. Patient, watching. I stepped back slightly. The lights blinked faster, almost urgent, a rhythm I could feel more than hear. Shadows bent toward them, stretching impossibly under the pale moonlight. The fog pressed higher, brushing my waist, my arms. I swallowed. The sequence of lights blinked back at me again, deliberate. The hum inside my chest rose, deep and low, vibrating through every bone, every nerve. I could feel them, watching, aware, patient. I turned slowly, retracing my steps. The fog pressed around me like a gentle hand. The lights continued blinking, each pulse synchronized with my retreat. Patient, deliberate, aware. Finally, I reached the tree line. The fog thinned slightly. The lights blinked one last time, slow, deliberate. The hum in my chest faded, leaving only the memory. Even now, when the night is still, I can see them, blinking in the distance, waiting, mimicking, patient, insistent. The fields remember, the lights remember, and I know if I return, they will blink back, patient, deliberate, silent. The edge of the forest pressed against the field tonight. Mist curled along the tall grass, soft and slow, brushing my ankles. The air smelled of damp earth and pine, with a faint metallic tang that made my chest tighten. I walked carefully, each step soft on the wet ground. Then I saw them, a figure, tall, thin, standing at the tree lean, just beyond the fog's reach. Watching, patient. I froze. The hum began low in my chest, vibrating faintly through my ribs. The figure did not move, did not breathe, yet I could feel it, aware, waiting. I stepped forward slowly. The fog curled around my legs, pressing gently, patient. The figure remained at the edge, motionless. Each time I blinked, I thought it had vanished. And each time I opened my eyes, it was still there. Shadows stretched beneath the trees, bending impossibly, leaning toward me. The hum in my chest grew louder, synchronized with my heartbeat. Every nerve in my body screamed to turn back. Curiosity anchored me in place. I stepped closer. The figure vanished. The mist rolled in, curling higher, pressing against my knees. The edge of the forest remained empty, almost empty. Footprints appeared, leading from the tree lean to the spot where the figure had stood, but they led nowhere else. They ended abruptly in the fog. Patient, deliberate, I took a cautious step forward. The hum rose, vibrating through my teeth, ribs, skull. Shadows bent closer, impossible angles under the pale moonlight. I could feel eyes on me, watching from just beyond sight. I whispered, almost without thinking, "Who's there?" No answer, only silence, only the fog curling higher around my legs. Then I felt movement, soft, deliberate. Footsteps, but they did not match mine. The air shifted around me, brushing my skin like a cold hand. The figure returned, a shadow at the edge, patient, watching. I stepped back. It vanished again. Footprints remained. I blinked, and it was there once more. The fog thickened. The trees bent slightly, forming shapes that seemed deliberate. Shadows pulsed with a hum inside my chest, synchronized with my heartbeat. I could feel it through my limbs, a low vibration that pressed against me, aware, insistent. I wanted to run. Every instinct screamed to flee, but I couldn't move fast enough. The figure's presence anchored me in place. Patient, silent, I edged toward the road. The footprints lingered, leading into nothing. The fog pressed higher, brushing my waist, curling around my arms. Shadows leaned toward me. I turned briefly, to see the figure one last time. It stood at the forest edge, just beyond the fog, tall, thin, motionless, and in that moment, I knew it had always been watching, always aware, waiting. I stepped onto the road. The fog thinned slightly, but the memory lingered. The footprints vanished behind me. The hum receded slowly, leaving only a faint vibration in my chest. Even now, when the night is still, I can feel it. Watching, patient, silent, always at the edge. And I know that if I ever return to the forest, the figure will be there again, waiting, patient, deliberate. The house was quiet tonight, too quiet, the kind of silence that presses against your ears, curling into your skull. I climbed the stairs slowly, each step soft on the worn wood. The air smelled faintly of dust, old timber, and something colder, deeper. I reached the attic door. It was slightly ajar. I hadn't opened it before, though it felt cooler beneath my fingers as I pushed it fully open. The attic was empty, or so it seemed. Shadows stretched across the floor, bending in the pale light from a single cracked window. I stepped inside. The boards groaned softly, echoing in the hollow space. Then I saw a movement. A shadow flickered above me, stretching impossibly long. Not the wind, not the light. It lingered, patient, deliberate, aware. I froze. The hum in my chest began low, vibrating through my ribs, teeth, skull. The air pressed against my skin, cold and damp. The shadows moved slowly, curling around the corners, bending unnaturally. I took a careful step forward. The attic seemed to stretch, elongated beyond sense. Shadows shifted, layering over one another, patient, deliberate. Something whispered, faint, unintelligible. A rustling across the boards. Soft footsteps above me, though the ceiling was bare. I swallowed. The hum deepened. It pulsed in rhythm with my heartbeat. The shadows twisted, curling closer, bending impossibly toward me. I felt them watching. Patient, silent. I reached the far wall. A shape moved in the corner of the attic, long and thin. It vanished when I looked directly. I blinked. It was back, leaning impossibly, stretching across the wall and ceiling. The air grew colder. Faint frost brushed my cheeks, though the attic was warm. The shadows shifted again, patient, deliberate. I could feel eyes in the dark, watching me, aware of every breath. I whispered, almost involuntarily, "Who's there?" No answer, only movement, soft, deliberate. The boards creaked under the weight of something unseen. I stepped back slowly. The shadows followed, curling along the walls, stretching across the floor. Every instinct screamed to leave. Every nerve tightened with fear. A soft scraping echoed from above. Not wood, not metal, something else. The shadows responded, bending toward the sound, twisting impossibly. I climbed backward toward the attic door. The boards groaned, echoing in the empty space. The hum in my chest rose, low and insistent, vibrating through my limbs. I could feel it synchronize with the unseen presence in the room. I reached the door. The shadows recoiled slightly, curling away, patient but aware. I closed the door softly behind me. The attic returned to silence. I exhaled slowly. The hum lingered in my chest. The house was quiet again. Too quiet. Even now, when the night is still, I can feel the shadows, curling in the corners of my mind. Patient, silent, watching. I know the attic waits. It remembers. And if I ever return, the shadows will return with me. Patient, deliberate, silent. The lane was quiet tonight. Fog pressed low, curling around the lampposts, soft and patient. The air smelled of wet asphalt and metal, and the faint tang of something colder, waiting. I walked slowly, careful with each step. One street lamp glowed ahead. Pale, steady light. I moved closer, the fog curling higher around my ankles. Then it went dark. I stopped. The lane stretched ahead, swallowed by the fog. I stepped closer, curious, cautious. The light returned, but it was different. Eyes. Within the lamp's pale glow, I saw something faint, unblinking, watching, patient. I froze. The hum began low in my chest, vibrating through my ribs, teeth, skull. Shadows bent unnaturally in the fog, stretching toward me, patient, deliberate. I took a careful step forward. The eyes remained, reflecting in the fog, waiting. I blinked. They were still there. The fog pressed higher, curling around my legs, brushing my knees. A cold breeze whispered along the lane, carrying the faint scent of wet metal. The hum in my chest rose, insistent, synchronized with each blink of the lamp. I stepped closer again. The street lamp went dark. The fog thickened, pressing closer, patient. The eyes returned in the next pulse of light, unblinking, deliberate. I whispered, almost involuntarily, "Who's there?" No answer. Only the hum, low and insistent. The fog swirled, bending the shadows, stretching the light. I moved forward, careful, slow. The street lamp pulsed again. The eyes remained, reflecting something I couldn't name. The fog pressed higher, curling around my waist, soft, deliberate. I stopped in the middle of the lane. The lamp went dark. The fog curled tighter, patient. The hum deepened inside me, vibrating through every bone, every nerve. Then the light returned. The eyes within it blinked once, slowly, deliberately. I could feel them watching, aware, patient. I stepped back. The fog followed, curling around my ankles, brushing soft against my skin. The hum receded slightly, leaving a faint vibration in my chest. The street lamp pulsed again, pale and deliberate. I moved past it slowly. The fog pressed higher along the lane, patient. Shadows bent beneath the lamplight, impossible angles stretching toward me. The eyes remained, watching. I reached the end of the lane. The fog thinned slightly. The street lamp glowed faintly in the distance. The eyes vanished, but the memory remained. Even now, when the night is still, I can feel them, watching me from the edges of the light. Patient, deliberate, silent. The lane waits, the fog waits. And I know if I return, the street lamp will return too, eyes unblinking, watching. Patient. The lane was quiet. Fog pressed low against the pavement, curling around my legs. Patient. The air smelled damp, metallic, sharp. Every breath I took felt thick and cold. A gust of wind brushed my neck. Not gentle, cold, cutting. I turned. Nothing. The hum in my chest rose, low and insistent, vibrating through my ribs and teeth. I took another step. A freezing gust followed, brushing along my shoulders, curling around my waist. I stopped. Every instinct told me to run, but curiosity anchored me in place. I felt it then. A presence, patient, deliberate, following, matching my pace. Every step I took echoed softly in the fog, and so did it. I whispered, almost without thinking. Who's there? No answer. Only the hum inside me, synchronized with some unseen heartbeat. I turned quickly. Nothing. Only fog curling higher, pressing soft against my legs, patient, deliberate. I walked faster. The cold gust returned. Every step behind me matched mine exactly. Patient, silent, aware. Shadows stretched along the edges of the lane, bending impossibly. The fog pressed closer, brushing my arms. I felt eyes on my neck, on my shoulders, patient, observing. I dare not look back again. The presence followed, just beyond sight. Every heartbeat echoed in my chest with the low hum, insistent, vibrating. Finally, I reached home. The cold faded slightly, but the memory lingered. Even now, when the night is still, I can feel it. The breath behind me. Patient, silent, waiting. The forest waited tonight. Fog curled between the trunks, soft and deliberate. The air smelled of wet moss, pine, and something faintly metallic pressing against my chest. I walked carefully, listening. Trees bent slightly in the fog. Not natural. Deliberate. Patterns. I stepped closer. Shadows in the mist pulsed faintly, synchronized with a low hum in my chest. The forest seemed alive, patient, aware. A faint rustling drifted through the trees. Not wind. Something moving carefully, deliberately. I stopped. The fog pressed against my ankles. Branches arched impossibly, forming shapes that seemed to watch me, bending toward me. The hum inside me deepened, vibrating through my ribs, teeth, and skull. I leaned closer. The shadows pulsed again like a heartbeat. The trees leaned in, almost communicating, signaling. I could feel awareness in the air, deliberate, patient. I stepped forward. The fog swirled higher, brushing my legs, wrapping around me. The forest bent toward me, patient, insistent. Shadows stretched impossibly, curling along the trunks. I whispered, almost involuntarily. Who's there? No answer. Only the hum, synchronized with the pulse of the shadows. I moved slowly through the fog. The branches bent closer. Shadows curled and stretched. The patterns in the trees repeated, deliberate, almost intelligent. I stopped again. The forest leaned closer, patient. I could feel unseen eyes pressing through the fog, watching. The hum vibrated through my limbs. I turned back. The path behind me had disappeared. The fog pressed higher. The trees leaned impossibly, bending to form deliberate shapes. Patient, aware. I stepped forward again, toward the clearing. The patterns in the trees pulsed once more, synchronized with my heartbeat. The fog lingered, curling around my waist. Shadows bent closer. Finally, the trees thinned. The fog remained patient. The hum receded slightly, leaving a faint vibration in my chest. The forest remembered. Patient, deliberate, silent. It wasn't there yesterday. I noticed it in the driveway this morning. A truck, old, rusted slightly, seemingly abandoned. I approached cautiously. The seats looked warm, but no one was inside. Patient, watching. The hum in my chest began low, vibrating faintly. Every instinct screamed to step back. Curiosity held me in place. I circled the truck. Windows dark. Fog curling around the tires. Patient. The air smelled metallic. Damp. Pressing against my skin. I touched the door. Cold. Solid. It opened with soft resistance. No one inside. Yet the seats were warm. The hum grew stronger, vibrating through my ribs, teeth, skull. Shadows from the fog leaned across the truck, bending impossibly. I stepped back. The fog swirled higher, curling around the wheels. The truck remained. Patient, silent, watching. I left the driveway. Every step echoed softly, swallowed by the fog. The hum lingered in my chest. The truck waited. Even now, when the night is still, I can feel it. Warm, watching, patient. No matter where I go, it follows. The fog curls low along the streets, fields, forests. Patient, persistent. I step onto the lane. Fog presses against my ankles. It swirls gently, deliberate, aware. I walk faster. It keeps pace. Every step I take, it curls around me, closer, heavier. Shadows bend within it, stretching impossibly. I feel eyes in the mist, patient, watching. I try to escape, through fields, down streets, into forests. It follows, patient, insistent. The hum rises in my chest, low, vibrating, synchronized with the fog's pulse. Every breath I take is swallowed by it. Even now in the quiet, I feel it. The fog waiting, pressing, patient, silent, never leaving. Above the forest, I saw it. A single light, pale and steady, pulsing slowly. Patient, the fog curled at my feet. Shadows bent beneath the trees. The hum in my chest rose, synchronized with the light's pulse. I stepped closer. The light called to me, welcoming, not threatening, not hostile, patient, deliberate. The air smelled faintly metallic, sweet, pressing against my chest. The fog swirled higher, brushing my waist. Shadows leaned closer, bending impossibly. I reached toward the light. It pulsed again, soft, deliberate. The hum vibrated through my ribs, teeth, skull. I could feel it in every nerve, every limb. Step by step, I walked into the forest. The fog pressed around me, patient. The shadows followed, stretching impossibly beneath the pale glow. The light welcomed me. No fear, no hesitation, only silence, patient, deliberate, aware. I stepped closer still. The hum rose and softened. The forest, the fog, the shadows, all receded. The light embraced the unknown, and I felt peace, calm, acceptance. Even now, in the stillness, I remember the light pulsing above the trees. Patient, welcoming, silent,